All right. Hello. Okay. Hey everybody, this is Gamester of 92 here, and I'm going to do a video that's completely different to what I usually do. Normally with my video I focus on like gaming and other things. I try to stay away from politics as much as possible, but being that I'm from North Central Massachusetts, I actually recently came upon this debate between candidates for state senator in North Central Massachusetts, one of them being Senator John Cronin, who is the current senator, and the other one is Nicholas Pirro III from Lunenburg, which happened to be, which I also used to live in Lunenburg, but that's a story for another time. But anyways, I saw this like a debate, and I watched like most of it. I haven't like watched like the closing arguments, but I wanted to make like a note reaction to from my feelings to all of this, and I try to go in completely unbiased, but I have voted for Senator Cronin in the past. One of the reasons being because I actually went to the Lunenburg schools with his younger brother Mike, and I'm not really gonna get into my history on that because that's a bit complicated, and I feel like deserves a discussion for another time. But anyways, that's how I know John Cronin, because of his brother Mike. So I just wanted to get into to react how I feel about this. So without further ado, let's see how this will start. Here we go. So this comes from FATV. This is from the channel Lunenburg Access.
From the John R. Tater Auditorium at Leominster City Hall, this is the only debate between the candidates for State Senate for the Worcester Middlesex District. The candidates are incumbent Democrat John
Cormier. I think I might know a couple of people with that last name in the Leominster area or Fitchburg area. I don't know.
Cronin and Republican challenger Nick Pirro.
Oh yeah, that's what I think I need to mention. John Cronin on the left side is Democrat, while the right side is Republican Nick Pirro.
We only have 1 hour and a lot to get to, so we're going to get right to work. Question 1. Governor Maura Healey declared a state of emergency as a historic influx of migrants sought help from the Commonwealth's strained shelter system. Massachusetts is the only state in the country with a right to shelter law, which guarantees homeless families access to emergency shelter. Would you reconsider this law? And what kinds of policies and procedures would you support going forward to deal with the ongoing migrant crisis? Senator Cronin.
Okay, now before we get into this, I know from Republican standpoint, Pirro is definitely going to cherry pick and find ways to defame Cronin and such, using all the migrant things as an excuse. Personally, I think the influx of migrants that Massachusetts was having was basically from like fucking Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sending them all to Martha's Vineyard. I remember that. So DeSantis is one of the contributing factors for that influx, but we'll get into more of that.
So first, thank you, Kevin. It's an honor to be here with you, and I want to thank my opponent, Mr. Pirro, for joining us here tonight in this forum. This is incredibly difficult.
Yep, that's what you basically do, is regardless of how you feel about each other, you always thank your opponent and such for showing up and such.
Difficult issue. We have a shelter system that is broken, that is not working, and that is unsustainable.
I definitely agree. And in fact, there are towns in north central Massachusetts where there's only like one homeless shelter, including places like Fitchburg and Leominster. And there's not enough homeless people that will actually be able to find a place to stay, especially for the upcoming winter. I know of like one person that I worked with at an indoor flea market where my repair shop was located, but was all affected because of the flooding the Leominster flooding that happened last year, which they do get into, by the way. And he doesn't have a home, and he tells me that he's been homeless not because of the flooding, but for another like various thing happening to like with his vendors and such. But anyways, let this continue.
And our job in state government is to make really difficult choices. We have a $56 billion state budget that we did in the last fiscal year. Every dollar that we appropriate to education is a dollar that doesn't get appropriated to transportation. Every dollar that we appropriate to our EA and shelter system is a dollar that doesn't get appropriated to save Neshoba Valley Medical Center. It doesn't get appropriated to increase local aid to communities. It doesn't get appropriated to send more money to fix our roads. And so that's why I am one of 5 Democrats who broke with my party in the Senate and broke with the governor, and I voted across the aisle with the Republicans to reform this system and against an expansion of hundreds of millions of dollars to expand again a program that is not working, that we know is broken.
So I definitely agree with him. I am familiar with Neshoba hospital that was closed down and such, because I do believe that the legislative government has not done enough to keep those places open and such, and it's really a damn shame. I'm really grateful that someone like John Cronin is able to... Hold on. Sorry about that. Anyways.
We need bipartisanship on this issue. And I'm very critical of our 2 U.S. senators. Our 2 U.S. senators are both Democrats. They voted against a bipartisan compromise that would have secured our border and sent resources to do that. They voted against a compromise that would have sent money to our states and tightened our asylum. That's something I would have voted for and supported. But let's remember the real reason that we can't get comprehensive federal immigration reform. It's because Donald Trump did really the most shameless thing that you can do in politics. He told every Republican in Congress, no deal. I don't want a law. I don't want a fix. I want the issue. Not because it's good for my country, not because it's going to help people, not because it's going to help states, because it's good for me and it's going to help me win the election.
He's definitely right. Trump has done that. Whether you're a Trump supporter or not, he said that no deal. He told Republicans no deal, which is, of course, absolutely shameless, because if you don't do any kind of deal, then you still have this issue, and it's not going to do anyone any favors. Even for Trump, I think it just hurts Trump even further. But I digress with that. Fuck.
So we need bipartisanship, compromise, pragmatism. That's what I brought to this issue as a senator, and I'll continue to do.
Mr. Pirro.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Mr. Cronin, for being here tonight. The migrant crisis right now is costing us over $1 billion annually. Right now, the policies allow...
I don't know where he's getting that $1 billion estimate from. He didn't really cite that at all. And if you think, because you're pausing, you're not going to allow him to cite it. No, he doesn't cite that at all, so...
For immediate access to emergency housing for migrants, basically incentivizing arrivals. There's also a large lack of transparency with over 600 emergency incidents with no reported housing facilities and no public disclosures of details. The right to shelter law needs to be changed. We need to implement a residency requirement and enforce a 6-month residency requirement before allowing qualifying.
I just noticed that stupid pin on Pirro's jacket that says with shaped as Massachusetts, which for some reason Nantucket is cut off. Not sure why. That's supposed to be some sort of like symbolism of what he stands for or not, but it just says like Pirro on it. He's supposed to be like for the people, not for politics, which is absolutely bullshit with him. Because he has, a few years ago, was the subject of a lawsuit against him of unpaid overtime wages to his workers of a company called Quality Towing and Recovery, Inc. So, but we'll get into that later.
New rivals for housing. We need to honor the federal immigration laws and ensure cooperation with federal authorities, including ICE detainees for migrants accused of serious crimes. And we need full disclosure of incident details and contracts with the vendors managing the migrant crisis with regular reporting on the expenditures. And then we need to prioritize funds for the long-term residents of Massachusetts first, and then with whatever else we have to help others.
Okay, as we will with every round, we're going to open it up after each candidate has the opportunity to answer the question with a 5-minute open discussion where the candidates can directly interact with each other. They can question each other, rebut, clarify, add anything new. Either candidate want to talk about more about this issue?
Senator Cronin, do you have a suggestion of how many people that we should be letting into the state right now?
So I do. So that's why I voted with the Republican minority leader in the Senate to prioritize veterans.
So you notice that like Cronin has a button on his jacket as well, but that's because he's actually a veteran in addition to his experience. And I've spoken to a few people that have like served with him. He's actually a really good person. And I can't remember if I ever met John Cronin in person. I have talked to him via email and text message several times. Half of the time involving getting his lawn signs, including getting one replaced because some Pirro supporter had to steal it or something. But I digress. But yeah, I've heard he's a really good person. Again, I haven't met him yet, but he does strike me as really well competent.
To prioritize people who have a residency, who have been here in Massachusetts. But again, we need to get back to the core of why this problem that we're facing is here. And it's because of the failure of federal comprehensive immigration reform. So
exactly. That's exactly the core issue. Because if you're just going to cherry pick things and such, then it's not really going to get to a permanent solution and such. Which is exactly what Republicans do. It's just like cherry pick and such and just never get that kind of stuff done. Because they feel like, oh, if we cherry pick this certain ways, then it's going to make us look better in the long run. But it doesn't really fix the issue at its core, does it?
We need the feds to step up. We need Republicans and Democrats to come together to secure our border, to tighten our asylum process, and to send money to states to help us mitigate this mess. And we can debate the shelter law until the cow goes over the moon. We don't really have a right to shelter here in Massachusetts. We have a shelter system that is subject to appropriation. There's no such thing as a right that is subject to appropriation. So I voted against expansion of the program. I voted against hundreds of millions of dollars to, again, something that is unsustainable and something that will make the problem worse. And I think
yeah, and there have been many examples of that happening, not just in Massachusetts, but all over the U.S., where they appropriate funds into programs that are not sustainable in the long run. But there's just too many programs to list for this, so let's just get back to the debate.
I think, to be frank and to be blunt, there's a lot of agreement between me and my opponent here on this issue.
Well, I wouldn't disagree that we've got some, but I think we've got some differences there. So you're saying that you don't think that we have a right to shelter here in Massachusetts. Then all the people that are coming here and end up...
He's missing the point of what Cronin is saying. It's like saying right to shelter in a fund in a... I'm sorry, what did he say?
Something that is unsustainable and something that will make the program is a right that is subject to appropriation. So
subject to appropriation. So
right to shelter here in Massachusetts. Then all the people that are coming here and end up sleeping at the airport and then people sleeping on the streets. This is why are they coming here if they're not being incentivized to come here?
They are incentivized to come here, and that's why I voted with the Republicans to reform the system.
Okay.
It's like, okay. Yeah, being passive aggressive is not really the greatest way to debate with someone. It's not even the best way to have a discussion with anyone in general. Especially if that passive aggression is blunt, very obvious. But that's not the only time you'll see that attitude coming from him. I mean, granted, he's not going to act all Donald Trump style, but he does use some of those elements to his, speech.
Anything else from either of you on this issue? No. Moving on. Question 2. A poll in June conducted by WCVB-TV in Boston and UMass Amherst showed that housing affordability and the ongoing shortage of housing remains the #1 concern of Massachusetts voters. What are your ideas to tackle this issue, Mr. Pirro?
So I definitely do agree that housing in Massachusetts has gone up, and that is still an underlying issue that needs to be addressed. And the only way to expand on to one of the things to mitigate that is to expand building more houses and such. For example, renovating old mills that have been abandoned by cities for years and revitalizing them for the 21st century for other purposes that could last in the long run. Because let's face it, not just in Massachusetts, but how many places have you drove by that have abandoned mill buildings that you feel like could be put to better use as opposed to just sitting there vacant? And that's especially the case with Massachusetts, because you wouldn't believe, when I was going to high school and to college, especially at UMass Lowell, how many mill buildings there were that were just vacant and not being used for other purposes, like for housing and such. But I feel like there was more work that needs to be done there, but I feel like that's an underlying issue as well. 2 minutes.
Thank you. First off, the issue that I see the most with the housing is the unfunded mandates that are coming from Boston and putting the...
Okay, so I just want to tell you, he's going to focus a lot attacking Cronin, saying that he'll be out of touch because he's getting all his influence from Boston here, Boston that, and Boston all that crap. So keep that in mind throughout this whole debate, that he's going to keep bringing up Boston again and again and again just to attack him, because you will see his desperation by the end of this debate.
Financial strain on the local towns, forcing them to increase taxes or reduce services, as well as zoning laws that create regulatory policies to limit housing and development, which increases costs. We need to end unfunded mandates, push for legislation that ensures that the state covers the cost of any mandates they impose on local governments to avoid budget strain. We need to promote local control over zoning. We should not be forced with things like the MBTA Communities Act to require zoning overlay districts. We should be able to determine that with the home rule. We need to incentivize affordable housing development and provide some tax incentives or grants to developers who commit to building affordable housing in the areas that need it. And then we also need to do something to cap the property tax, to advocate for measures to limit property tax growth, ensuring ending the financial burden on homeowners and renters.
Thank you. Senator Cronin.
I'm really proud of the work and the progress that we've made in my 2 terms and 4 years in the Massachusetts Senate on housing. This summer I voted for, and with my colleague Representative Higgins, we passed the most historic investment that is going to spur housing production in Massachusetts history, more than $5 billion. And
that's not a small number. That's quite a large amount for expanding on housing.
The heart of this issue is supply. We need to build more housing, and we need to be talking about supply-side solutions. So we have authorized a bond bill of $5 billion that is going to create thousands of new units across the Commonwealth in every type of housing, from deeply affordable to market rate. One of the jobs that I am most proud of that I have in the Massachusetts Senate is I chair the Gateway Cities Caucus, and it is a coalition of senators and representatives from 26 of the most economically depressed corners of the state: Fitchburg, Leominster, Worcester, Holyoke, basically all the mill towns that have been left behind over the last 50 years. And I am really proud that as part of tax reform package that we passed last year, we included a tax incentive that's going to spur private investment in gateway cities and result in thousands of new units. It's called the Housing Development Incentive Program. It was our #1 priority for the Gateway Cities Caucus, and we got it done. So we expanded a tax credit that had existed since the Patrick administration, and we tripled the size of it. Not only did we do that, triple the size from 10 million per year to 30 million, but we cleared a backlog of $56 million in projects that were shovel-ready and ready to be built in gateway cities. So that's how we build our middle class in Fitchburg and Leominster. We incent private investment, we work with the business community, and that's going to help us build our middle class and make sure that we are a place where young families are coming to start and raise their families.
Okay, so one thing you'll notice with their posture of Cronin, he will rarely even look down at his notes to keep up or know exactly what he's talking about. He's always being very respectful to the crowd that's there, even though from what I understand, the crowd that day was not huge, but he still says all this, and he's very confident with what he's saying while he's addressing the crowd as well, because the crowd are the ones that vote for these type of people, and they should be included in this as much as the people that are on the stage. But for Pirro, you'll notice that he hardly ever looks at the audience as well. He's always just looking down at his notes when he's talking a lot, and when he's debating when he's debating with Cronin during the five or 2 minute thing, he's not even paying attention to the crowd at all. It's as though the crowd wasn't even there. So I mean, there's only a few instances I recall that he even looks at the audience, but I don't think he's even talking when he's actually looking at the audience. He's just listening because someone in the crowd has a question or two. So you could tell from his posture. You'll see in a bit here.
Thank you. Up to 5 minutes for open discussion on the issue.
Yeah, you could just see how he's just standing there with his hand like this and such. It's he doesn't seem that confident in himself, though he tries to stay firm where he stands.
The MBTA Communities Act and the forced mandates from the state level, how does that benefit the local level and with people knowing from each individual city and town what they need?
I could not disagree stronger with my opponent on this issue. So the MBTA Communities Act asks municipalities, cities and towns across the Commonwealth to zone where around public transportation. And we need to do that if we're going to build more housing. We need to build 200,000 more units of housing here in the state if we're just going to catch up to the demand today. So, I am really confused by my opponent putting forward and promoting ideas that are anti-business, anti-growth, anti-workforce. We have a problem of 1,000 young people every week who are leaving the state because they can't afford housing. And my opponent wants to kowtow to town.
It's not just young people, but also middle-aged people as well. They're leaving as well because of the affordability for housing, which I feel should be brought down significantly in Massachusetts.
Who don't want any new development. Here in our gateway cities, we have a different challenge. We have a challenge financing new construction and getting private dollars invested here. That's why I promoted the Housing Development Incentive Program, and we've done a number of other things. Devon's, 1993, there was a housing cap set, and it has been there, and they've been at that cap for almost 10 years. We raised that cap in the Economic Development Bill, and that's going to allow the production of hundreds of more units. So economic economic development, at the heart of economic development, at the heart of being pro-business, at the heart of being pro-growth, at the heart of building a middle class here in north central Massachusetts is building more housing. My opponent wants to kowtow to NIMBYism. I don't. I want families to stay here, to build their families here, and I want their kids to be able to stay and afford to live here in north central Massachusetts.
Senator Cronin.
We're going to
Exactly. Yeah, he's not gonna let Pirro award it.
fail at that if we adopt the policies of my opponent. Supply side, build, build, build.
Okay. Where do you plan on these people getting health care or education if you're putting the cart before the horse here?
No, I'm not.
Yes.
Absolutely not. Housing is at the core of economic development, right?
Yeah, it is like at the core, because all Pirro's doing is just throwing, just like cherry picking what other like things to throw in just to throw Cronin off guard. But Cronin stands like really well in deflecting those kind of like cherry picks.
You go to Devon's, and Devon's is here in my district. There are nearly 900 engineers that show up to Commonwealth Fusion, right? 900 engineers who make over $100,000 a year. I want those people with PhDs and master's degrees to raise their family in places like Fitchburg and Leominster. I don't want them doing a reverse commute to Lexington. So we have a competitive advantage.
Why would they come here without a good school system or an overrun school system with you and having hospitals close under your watch? That's irresponsible.
Just because something closed under someone's watch, that doesn't mean that person is directly responsible for that closure, because there are other factors that happen as a result of that. Just because it happens on their watch, that doesn't mean they were responsible for it in any way. It's just unbelievable.
Hey, economic development is the way we stabilize our healthcare system. The maternal health unit in Neshoba Valley Medical Center closed for one reason. It's because we have a lot of poor people that live here in north central Massachusetts who rely on Medicaid, who rely on Mass Health. What, do you want to stop giving them health care? So we stabilize our healthcare system by getting young professionals with great jobs who have commercial insurance, who are going to improve our payer mix. That's how we keep essential services here. That's how we keep our hospitals open. It's not by anti-growth policies. It's not by kowtowing to NIMBYism. And I'm really shocked that that my opponent is promoting these policies that are failed policies, and they are at the heart of why our Commonwealth faces a housing crisis right now.
Well, I can see how we were different. You have zero experience in the private sector and actually creating jobs. This isn't fixed by mandates from the top down.
He's entirely wrong about like having zero experience. I mean, he can say that all he wants, but it's not really gonna make him look any more credible.
This needs to be fixed from the ground up when the market builds the stuff that it needs. Mandating that towns build housing before they have the resources, and it's unsustainable.
My opponent fundamentally misunderstands the housing crisis in north central Massachusetts. Talk to any...
I like how he's not saying like his name like or pointing out directly. It's like he'll just say my opponent, my opponent, my opponent. So he's being very respectful in that regard.
Developer, they can go build housing anywhere in the state, and they choose to not build in north central Massachusetts because the rents are too low to sustain market rate development. So we need to incentivize and spur private development. We are open for business in our gateway cities. In Fitchburg and Leominster, we are working with the business community. We are working with builders. And I honestly...
Could you expand on the rents being too low in north central Massachusetts, please?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the crowd laughing.
So in north central Massachusetts, a two-bed, one-bath is $1,700 a month.
What do you think that
If you go 10 miles to the east, it's $3,700, right? So we are in competition with capital that is mobile and people that can build housing anywhere. So we need to incent private investment to build the housing we need to grow our community.
What do you think the rent should be?
I want the rents going down, and the rents are going to go down by building more housing and attacking our housing crisis with supply-side solutions. My opponent is anti-growth, he's anti-business, he's anti-workforce, and he's not going to promote policies that we need here in North Central Massachusetts to have a vibrant economy in the future.
You've contradicted yourself right there. You said you want rents to go down, but 2 seconds before you said that we were priced too low and that's why the builders aren't coming here. You can't fix this problem with mandates. You cannot fix this with mandates.
You fix it by building housing, and you promoting policies that are going to push developers into other parts of the state is the wrong way forward for North Central Massachusetts.
But I know what the developers need more than you do. I've worked
Do you really? I'm sure you do.
with them for 25 years.
I disagree.
Okay. That's your
Okay.
opinion.
Okay, we good?
Yep.
Next question. The last 2 years have brought us the closing of the birthing unit at Leominster Hospital and most recently the closure of Neshoba Hospital in Air. As state senator, what will you do to help ensure access to quality health care for residents of your district? Senator?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier with the closure of those like 2 birthing hospitals. It's not something that Cronin is directly responsible for, despite the fact happening under his watch. He tried so hard to keep those open, but there are other factors that are stronger than him that override that. So it's more complicated. It's much more complicated than just saying, "Oh, it happened under his watch" and such. There's a lot more to it.
Senator Cronin.
Sure. So first, we need to make sure that what happened at Neshoba Valley Medical Center never happens again. Right?
Exactly.
And Ralph Delatour and Steward Healthcare sold our healthcare system out from under us. So I support legislation, and I have voted for legislation that will prevent that from ever happening again. We're going to prevent privately held companies from creating real estate trusts for crooks to steal money from our healthcare system. That's number one. We need to make sure what happened at Steward never happens again. Number two, I am on a task force appointed by the governor to mitigate and chart out the future for healthcare here in North Central Massachusetts. I have lobbied with my colleagues and we've been successful. We've got $250,000 grants for 8 communities who are most impacted. That's going to help our ambulances. That's going to help our EMS personnel mitigate the long travel times to get to an emergency department. There's one outcome that's going to be there's one outcome that's acceptable for me, and it is the establishment and state support for a satellite emergency department somewhere in the Neshoba Valley region. That's what we need. But again, how do we stabilize our healthcare system in North Central Massachusetts in the long term? It's economic development. It's make sure that we are setting the conditions to grow our economy, to attract 21st century innovation economy jobs. It's housing. All these things are related. So we need to build housing. We need to attract 21st century industries. We need to increase our commercial payer rate at all our providers. That's why we couldn't find a new operator for Neshoba Valley Medical Center. So economic development is absolutely the key, but right now, the state, our work is not done, and it's unacceptable that state government hasn't done more, but we need to step up in a big, significant way. We need to fund a satellite emergency department.
We'll get back to it.
Yep.
5-minute open discussion. Mr. Pirro.
Senator Cronin, I agree with you in needing to step up in a big way, but it's the different way than what you're explaining there. Right now, the closures of Leominster Hospital Birthing Center in Neshoba Valley, that happened on your watch right there.
Again, just because it happened on someone's watch, that doesn't necessarily mean they were directly responsible for those closures. As Cronin just explained, if he was listening, he wouldn't say that, but I digress.
The reason these hospitals are closing is because of the government mandating what they're being reimbursed. It's setting up these small community hospitals for failure, and more regulations and forcing them to stay open when it's unsustainable financially is not the key. There is many issues that need to be addressed, and a lot of it on the legislative end before blaming everything now on the owners. Now, Steward Hospital, absolutely, there was some other issues going on there, but there are systematic problems with the way that we repay these hospitals and determine the amount of money that they're getting paid. It's It's on the government that decides how much they get reimbursed. So when you have a lot of government-provided health care on a system that doesn't have a lot of insurance companies paying, the insurance companies don't have enough money to make up the costs for all the government, and it's just not going to work.
Okay, opened up for 5 minutes for...
So
I can't even figure out what kind of eye color Pirro has, because he just doesn't look at the audience at all. He just keeps looking directly at Cronin, as well as all of his papers while he's talking. Whereas with Cronin, you can see his face clear as day, as clear as Kevin right there in the middle. But I digress.
So I have a question. So what my opponent's really saying is that we provide too much health care to poor people. So who are you going to kick off of Mass Health? Who are you going to kick off of Medicaid? Why should we stop promoting services? We need to increase those reimbursement rates. But what is your plan to sustain the healthcare system and deal with the Medicaid rates?
It's not to sit here and blame other people when the blame lies on ourselves.
What? On yourself? Like, oh, so you're going to blame yourself as well? What are you going to do by it, huh?
Legislature. We need to get that addressed. We need to make sure that the repayment rates are increased. And it's not about kicking anybody off of anything. It's about making sure that we do what's financially responsible.
Yeah, that includes kicking people off because you think that's not going to be financially viable.
I mean, to give more resources by taxing the people that are working is not the answer.
No, I just think my opponent fundamentally misunderstands how we stabilize our healthcare system in north central Massachusetts. It's by having a juggernaut local and regional economy. It's by increasing the amount of commercial payers who are a part of our system. Look, our healthcare system is a mess. It is complicated and it works like anything but a system. But
Exactly.
Our system is going to be stabilized if we have more commercial payers here. That's why they're not losing essential services in Cambridge. That's why they're not losing essential services in Somerville. So economic development, bringing...
Well, that's because like Cambridge and Somerville, they're pretty wealthy. I mean, the only times I ever go up to Cambridge is to get to Micro Center for anything related to like computer building and fixing up game systems and whatnot. But I have seen like they're pretty wealthy places. Somerville, I don't really go to. In fact, I can't remember the last time I went to Somerville. I think that's like a bit further than when I'm willing to travel. But anyways,
21st century jobs with great benefits. That's how we're going to do it, and that's how we're going to increase services here in north central Massachusetts.
So do you think that the governor could have saved Neshoba Hospital had she?
Yes, she could have. She could have done a lot to save them, but she didn't.
Wanted to?
So we need to find a new operator, right? And that is the charge before the task force that I'm on right now. And we're doing that collaboratively. We have UMass at the table, we have Emerson at the table, we have every fire chief, we have every town administrator at the table. We need to find a new operator to establish and support a satellite emergency room department. That's the outcome in the barometer for success of our task force, and absolutely the governor needs to do more, and the legislature needs to do more to fund the resources that are going to be required to establish that.
So do you think she did everything that she could?
I think she has a lot more to do, and I think the legislature has a lot more to do.
Exactly.
I also believe that I am the candidate.
My God, Pirro's watch looks so goddamn expensive there. Probably more expensive than that iWatch that Kevin is wearing. But I digress.
Who understands the healthcare market. I serve as the vice chair of the Healthcare Finance Committee. I have had a hand in the legislation that the Senate passed to make sure that another Stewart crisis never happens again. So I absolutely think there is more work before us. I'm not satisfied with where we are. And again, what does success look like? It looks like the state supporting a new operator to establish an emergency department satellite.
Senator, it seems like your allegiances are more with Boston than they were
Yep, here he goes again with the Boston crap.
here. It seems like you're a little out of touch with the district.
No, he's not. No, he is definitely not. I can tell you, Cronin is definitely not out of touch. I can tell Pirro's out of touch because he's not even looking at the audience when he's talking, so...
Does that maybe have something to do with the
No,
fact?
not at all. I've
that-
delivered historic resources to this district over the past 4 years. Look at downtown Fitchburg. We've started public-private partnerships with the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority, with the city. We financed the Fitchburg Arts Community. I got a $3 million.
He's not wrong. I have seen those like places, and they are thriving. They are making progress. They're doing really well. Because if you go down on Main Street in Fitchburg, you'll see that there's a lot of buildings that are just like vacant because there's like no business coming in, and they are being revitalized. So they are making progress on that front, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done.
$1 earmarked for the Fitchburg Theater. There is a renaissance going on, and your people might gawk at it, but I believe in North Central
Yeah, they always gawk at everything.
Massachusetts, and I'm going to continue delivering historic resources to the city and to support the recovery. Leominster flood.
Okay, yeah, the Leominster flood. Yeah, that's something that affected me as well. And many other like small businesses and such. Anyone that has a business in Leominster and such will know exactly how affected they were. I mean, there was even there's even a Cadillac dealership that lost a chunk of their parking lot with a couple, I think 2 or 3 of their new cars just into the riverbank that are unsalvageable. I mean, they could have been salvageable, but they chose not to. But
After September 11th, we went and we found $10 million. In December of 2023, we passed a supplemental budget before the feds denied relief. We provided $3.5 million.
Yeah, I really want to make that clear. I was very disappointed by how slow the feds reacted to the relief, and the fact that they even denied it at one point was just absolutely disgraceful. And it's and especially with the slow response from Governor, from the Massachusetts governor. I don't know why her name escapes my mind. Maura Healey. Yeah, Maura Healey. I don't know why this. I live in Massachusetts. I should know my governor's name, but just wish Charlie Baker was still in charge, because he would have reacted a lot faster. And the only reason why that Baker chose not to run for another term was because he would not get any backing from his Republican colleagues, because his Republican colleagues are puppets to Trump. And Baker is pretty much against Trump, especially with the way he's been supporting abortion clinics and such for women's right to choose, and especially for how he handled the pandemic when it began in 2020. He was not being stupid about it. He was taking every precautions necessary, and that was a Republican governor in a Democratic state. So that is quite significant for him. I mean, if either Cronin or Baker ever run for president, I'll definitely vote for either of them.
To the city before 2023 was over. We got resources because we did our job. Myself and Representative Higgins, we called in every favor. We used all our political capital. We delivered for this city. In the last budget, we got $500,000 to the Leominster Relief Fund in the United Way. We appealed the federal denial for individual assistance. So I take great umbrage with the fact that I'm not connected to this community and that I haven't delivered for this community, because nobody has delivered more over the past 4 years.
Senator Cronin, 80% of your campaign contributions come from outside the district for the last.
That is just completely irrelevant to what Cronin just said.
80% of your campaign contributions come from you. Hey, we have to run a campaign here. I have to get my message out, and I'm not going to apologize that I have to work to get resources to run a campaign.
Exactly.
So that means when everybody around here is asking where you are, you're out getting resources for your campaign out in Boston.
No.
But here he goes again with the Boston crap. And would it kill you to take off those glasses so I could see what your eyes actually look like?
Well, the numbers don't lie. 80%.
Sometimes they do. I'm not pulling the Charlemagne God tactic, or his real name, I think McKinley or something, but I'm not pulling that tactic. But the numbers can be skewed at times to favor other parties and such, but that's a whole other debate.
And actually, it's up to 85% this year.
So what
Where is he getting that source from? Where is he citing that? He never says.
are you saying?
I'm saying that,
What are you implying?
that you're more accountable to the people in Boston who donate money
No, he's not. Absolutely not.
to you than you are to the people of the district.
Where is he getting this information from? Where's the works? Where's the cited? It's crazy.
No, that's not true.
Okay, the 5 minutes is up on this one. On to the next question. A state senator must deal with many complex issues and be able to work with others to get things done. How has your professional, educational, and life experiences shaped you to be the best candidate on this stage to represent the people of this district with knowledge and effective leadership? Mr. Pirro.
Oh, don't start with Pirro.
I've been in business for 25 years. I've grown up in this community. My leadership style in my own business is I have different people that run different departments, and I build an amazing team around me. It's definitely not about what I can do. I don't dictate the orders. I surround myself with intelligent people, and I empower.
Why? Because you're stupid at what you do. That's why you surround yourself with a bunch of intelligent people just to say, "Oh, your idea is dumb." Such. I mean, if you're running a business, that would imply you know what you're doing. If you don't, then that's why you surround yourself with intelligent people. I mean, you can surround yourself with intelligent people if you're just as intelligent as them, but that could also go into a bit of like a conflict with one another, whose intelligence is better and such. But anyways,
For them to do their job. This job is about listening to the people in the district, not telling them what to do. It's about relaying the information from the district to Boston and not top-down.
Oh my God, with the Boston crap again. He is so obsessed with the Boston crap. And I don't even live in Boston, so I don't know where he's getting this crap from.
Mandates. And I believe our current representative has it going the wrong direction. He believes in top-down mandates and dictating for the district what comes out of Boston.
Senator Cronin.
I think what we do in this position in the legislature is noble. I have been involved in public service every minute of my life. I swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution and joined the Army. I went to West Point. I led infantrymen in combat when I was 24. I redeployed with the same infantry company when I was 26. I've been tested and I've delivered. I know how to build teams. I know how to listen to people. I know how to lead. And frankly, there's a contrast here. I believe character and temperament matter. I believe character and temperament inform effectiveness. And so all of the professional experiences that I've had in my life have allowed me to deliver for this district. Don't take my word for it. I'm really proud that the people who I've worked closest with in this role are working really hard to reelect me. I've got the support of the entire legislative delegation, but more importantly, the people who are on the ground who I work with every day, city councilors, municipal officials, select board members, school committee members. I had more than 30 endorsements from Republicans, from independents, from Democrats.
Yeah, a Democrat getting endorsements from Republicans. You don't see that often, do you?
Who would disagree with what my
But I think that's becoming the general norm, considering how Dick Cheney, actually, the former vice president for George W. Bush, endorsed Kamala Harris.
My opponent said that I've lost touch. Hey, I live, eat, breathe, and bleed North Central Massachusetts. This job is all-consuming. We are always on, and we are always available to our constituents. I'm really proud of the team I've built. The first thing that we talked about, Kevin, when I sat down with you for my first interview, was I'm going to build a great team. My constituent services team.
Yeah, I've seen, like, he's done, like, plenty of our interviews for Cronin himself with other people, including politics, but I haven't seen that one in particular, so I'll try to get around to that sometime.
Team does office hours in each of the 10 communities every month. Monday through Friday, we are available in person. We are accessible, we are competent, we deliver for people. We're in the business of helping people, and that is noble. And my opponent seems to think that public service, that working in the legislature is somehow not honorable, and I just don't think that's very helpful.
Up to 5 minutes open discussion.
I said nothing about it being honorable, and first of all, thank you very much for your service. That is very honorable, and to all the men and women who've won that. But the issue with that being is that my approach is completely different than yours. Your experience is a top-down military-style command.
Okay, so yeah, I won't deny, like, their approach to, like, leadership is different because Pirro was never served in the armed forces, whereas Cronin has. But there are disadvantages if you don't have, like, you don't need to have, like, a military background to be a leader in thing, but that's makes it more challenging for you with no military background to be that leader that everyone would truly look up to. So you have to work a lot harder to do that. And if you get to the point where your own employees are suing you for unpaid overtime wages, then you're clearly not doing a good job as a leader.
Emphasizing.
You've never led a rifle platoon.
No, yeah. I'm not saying that I have, sir.
That's not how it works.
Okay, well, this is about listening from the bottom and going up. It's relaying information. You are a representative. We are representing the district, and we are not giving orders from the top down. That is the difference between our leadership styles, is I'm listening to the people and will relay the information that they want relayed up, not listening to the information Boston and relaying it down.
Oh my God, with the Boston. I should have just tally marked how many times he keeps bringing up Boston as an excuse to attack Cronin.
I disagree. This job is about public-private partnerships and reinforcing and supporting the great work that people in our community are doing. Let me give one example. So New View Communities in the old B.F. Brown Middle School, the Fitchburg Arts Community, that project languished for 10 years. And it's going to have a transformative effect on north of Maine and downtown Fitchburg. They could not put their financing together. In our delegation, myself and Representative Mike Kushmarek, we went to work. We secured nearly $1 million in earmarks by being really good at the legislative process. So we delivered for that project. We allowed them to close financing, and a vacant middle school that languished for 10 years is going to be artist preference housing. It's going to help that revitalization of Fitchburg. So, I mean, that's not top down, right? My job and what I've been successful at is reinforcing and supporting the incredible people here in North Central Massachusetts who do the work every day. And talk to a family member who got individual assistance from FEMA. Talk to somebody in Leominster who is going to benefit from the Leominster Relief Fund, the $500,000 that myself and representatives secured. I think they disagree with you that we are out of touch. I think they disagree with you that we are not responsive to the needs of our community. And I think they disagree with you with the idea and the contention that we haven't delivered and delivered in a historic way for this district.
Senator Cronin, do you know what the actual losses for Leominster were during the floods? It was significantly larger than what you're over here boasting that you brought back to the community to solve all these problems. And it's not...
Hey, FEMA is a mess. FEMA is political, and public assistance for FEMA was denied for Leominster, and that's an absolute disgrace. We see it on the news right now.
It is an absolute disgrace. I know, because I was part of that group that was supposed to be relieved, but were denied. So that's an absolute disgrace, indeed.
Right now, people in our communities need help when natural disasters hit. The roof of Tropicana Field got ripped off last night. Yes, our federal government needs to do more. Yes, FEMA, it's unconscionable that they denied public assistance. I would challenge you, could you give one example of one legislator anywhere in the state ever who 2 months after a natural disaster delivered $3.5 million outside of budget season to a community? Can you point to one legislator in this year's budget who delivered an earmark of $500,000 to the Leominster Relief Fund or any fund?
I can't. And it's quite impressive the way he did it outside the season period. So I can't really think of anyone else that done that, but
hey, all these numbers are relative. I have done everything that I can do. I have fought as hard as I could for this community, and I've delivered for this community. Yeah, I wish it was $40 million, but it's not. I got more than anybody else, any other legislator across the state. I've delivered in a historic way, so I won't apologize that it's some fantasy number that's in your head.
Do you think that those earmarks were rewards for voting with the party the way you should?
Oh my.
You know what? We have been debating for, 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah, pretty much 20, 30 minutes. And he's just... Why won't Pirro, the next time you have a debate with someone, while you're talking, look at the audience when you do it. Because half hour's passed and I have not, and you have not done that whatsoever. So if you're accusing Cronin of being out of touch when you can't even look at the crowd that is going to decide whether or not they want you as a senator.
I've been talking about how I have stepped away from my party, and I've been fearless in doing that. I have no problem standing up to the governor. I have no problem criticizing the legislature. I have no problem criticizing what we need to do. This is the test that I use on every issue that comes before me in the state Senate. Is it the right thing to do, and is it the right thing for North Central Massachusetts? And I stand by every single vote that I've ever taken, to include the votes where I stepped away from the governor, I stepped away from my party. I'm not afraid of that.
So you're happy to give out driver's licenses to illegal immigrants multiple occasions?
The voters chose that. The voters voted for that.
Exactly. That the voters chose that. He did not. He didn't vote for that. The voters did it. So, and just hearing the tone, so you're fine with that. It's like, that's typical Republican tone.
Do you not believe in democracy? Do you not believe in ballot questions?
So speaking of democracy, do you support the governor's emergency preamble to reduce the...
Oh boy, here we go with the gun thing. Here we go.
Democratic process?
So if we want to get into guns right now,
no,
Kevin,
I'm asking you.
No, Pirro definitely wants to get into guns. He definitely wants to get into guns. He can say no all he wants, but he knows exactly what... If he doesn't want to get into guns, why did he bring the governor preamble in the first place? I mean, the preamble thing she signed because citizens got more than 100,000 votes to stifle the strict gun law that was signed in by Healy. She was terrified by that. But my position on that, I feel like it's a bit too strict. I understand what she's trying to do, but it just feels a bit too strict. And fun fact, I actually managed to get my license to carry I think a couple of weeks before this bill was signed. So I actually dodged a bullet there. No pun intended.
See, I'm asking if you agree.
Absolutely. That went through a deliberate legislative process where we received public testimony. We heard from hundreds of people. Hey, and I voted for a bill that the Central Mass Chiefs of Police endorsed. So when law enforcement comes to me and they ask me for tools to keep our community safe, you bet I'm going to vote for it.
Well, I believe law enforcement has come to me recently.
Have they really? Have they really come to you? Yeah. Yeah, they also came to you with the lawsuit against you back in 2020, so... Yeah, they have been coming to you recently. Maybe to get that lawsuit resolved, I'm not sure.
And I
have a question for you, Mr. Pirro. Are
right,
you for...
5 minutes is up. Do you both want to do another 2 minutes?
No, you can move on.
Wow, you don't want to do another 2 minutes and get that question out of the way? Wow, okay.
No, move on? Okay, next question. What is the key to economic...
Yeah, you can see, like, a bit irritated how Cronin was that he could get that question because Pirro knows whatever answer he gives is not going to benefit him.
Development in our region, and why are you the best candidate suited to deliver for our area, Senator Cronin? 2 minutes.
Housing, right?
Housing.
My opponent seems to believe that we're not in a housing crisis. We absolutely are.
We definitely are in a housing crisis. Like, you could deny it all you want, but it's out there. It's real.
I have a record of delivering on housing. I've created public-private partnerships with Representative Kushmarek in downtown Fitchburg that have funded new development. Today, in the city of Fitchburg, the Economic Office of Housing and Livable Communities announced $1.6 million of grants to build new housing. Those vacant buildings that have been on Main Street for my entire life, we are retrofitting them to revitalize our downtowns, to increase housing stock. I'm the only member of this delegation who filed the housing development incentive program and got it passed. So I've secured more than $2.5 million worth of earmarks that have been directed to downtown Fitchburg. I've passed tax reform that has allowed up to $2 million tax credit to incent and spur private development in our gateway cities. And I wrote the bill, I filed the language, and I got it passed through the Massachusetts Senate to raise the housing cap at Devon so we can build for the first time in 30 years. That's pro-growth, that's pro-family, that's pro-worker, it's pro-business, and those are the types of policies, those are the types of solutions that we need here in North Central Massachusetts if we're going to have a vibrant economy. And in my opponent, I'm very critical of what he's been proposing. He's saying, hey, if you're not already here, doors closed, right? He is promoting policies that would stop new housing production. He's against the MBTA Communities Act. He's against zoning changes. He's against tax reform to incent private development. That's not good for anybody in this room. That's not good for the generations that are going to follow us in North Central Massachusetts. And again, that's not good for business.
Mr. Pirro.
Yeah, so I'm the only person on this stage right now who's created 30-plus jobs, started businesses.
Does that include the businesses that had employees file a lawsuit against you? And again, look at the goddamn crowd as well. It doesn't really take much effort. It's like as though he's just disregarding the crowd being there. Even though it's small, it's still a crowd nonetheless you have to acknowledge and you have to look at so you can be in touch with North Central Massachusetts.
Senator Cronin, I have the experience in the private sector. I know what it takes for economic development. I've worked with the contractors. I've dealt with the
Yeah, the contractors that are suing you.
mandates that have been passed down from the state and the regulations with the unforeseen consequences.
I mean, granted, the lawsuit that was filed against him was dated back in February of 2020, but it's still pretty relevant to whether or not his Pirro's credibility is any good.
I know what it takes to make an economy work. I've dealt with it. I've had to make the tough decisions.
The tough decisions to not pay those employees? Right.
I've had to lay people off when there was state mandates put in. I've created jobs. I've worked to help my employees get there.
If you did, you wouldn't have any of them suing you a few years ago, would you? And that topic was never brought up in this debate to begin with. I don't know if Cronin's team did not had any knowledge of that prior to this or what, but again,
it's not all about regulations and forcing things on people. It has nothing to do with me saying, I've never said that.
You don't have to say it. You can say it in other ways for it to mean the same thing.
The doors closed, don't come here. What I'm saying is that we need to prioritize the people here first. And a free market is going to determine what we need. So just forcing housing on people without schools and the necessary support that goes along with it is irresponsible, and especially doing it with taxpayer money. The job of a senator is to represent the people of the district and do what they want, not what the Boston elite want, and I think you've lost touch.
Okay. Here we go with the Boston elite lost touch and such crap.
With that.
So we have an aging population in North Central. 5 minutes. We have an aging population in North Central Massachusetts. We have a declining population in many of the municipalities that I represent and the region as a whole. Our demographic trend is going down. So we need to attract young families. We need to attract young professionals. And if we don't do that, we're not going to attract a 21st century economy. Housing's at the key to that, and I think there's a huge contrast between myself and my opponent. We need to talk about economic opportunity and pathways to the middle class, because that is the key component to economic development. I want to mention one program that I'm incredibly proud of. So in my first Senate debate in fiscal year 21, I passed an amendment that had never existed and created a line item in the budget that had never existed for innovation pathways. So they are work-based learning programs for juniors and seniors in comprehensive high schools that are aligned with an in the region industry. So advanced manufacturing, healthcare, business. That I got the first year in at 600,000. I've come back and back and back each budget year. That line item is $5 million right now, and it's expanded to more than 50 comprehensive high schools across the state that now provide work-based learning experiences for juniors and seniors. So we are giving kids the tools that they need to go into our local and our regional workforce and get a middle-class career and prosper and stay in the region where they grew up. I'm incredibly proud of that program, and I can talk about vocational education until the cow goes over the moon. We need to get the trades back in high school. I passed in this year's budget a commission to get everybody at the table, comprehensive superintendents, vocational superintendents, everybody from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and the legislature. And we're gonna make recommendations about how we put voc annexes at comprehensive high schools, like Fitchburg,
Senator
like
Cronin.
Gardner, like Leominster, to get kids vocational
Senator
training
Cronin.
and train them to the skills we need to grow.
How many times have you stepped foot in Neshoba Valley Tech in the time that you've been a senator?
Why make that? Why only cite that one? Why don't say what? I don't know why you just didn't say how many times have you stepped into a vocational tech school. Why you have to bring up that one specifically? Because he's still lingering on about that the closure of that hospital.
Neshoba Valley Tech? So I have a lot of issues with our superintendents at vocational schools because they're
How many,
violating
Senator?
the civil
How many?
rights.
Is that zero? Zero times.
Excuse me.
0 times you've been there.
So I
Zero.
have been fighting with the superintendents at vocational schools, and I'm incredibly proud of it because they are using...
Fighting does not solve the problems.
No,
Working
it
with them
absolutely
solves it.
doesn't. Creating a commission to create more vocational training in our comprehensive high schools solves the problem.
So how do you...
Creating a line item that's now $5 million to create
How are you
work-based
working with
learning
them if you
opportunities for
don't even
juniors and
speak?
seniors.
How do you work
solves
with
the
them if you
problem.
don't even speak to them?
That's not true.
It is true. How
No.
many times?
How do you know that's not true for a fact, Pirro? How do you know that's not true for a fact? Who are you talking to about that?
Times have you been there?
So I have met with the superintendent at Neshoba Tech last week with the chair of Ways and Means at the State House, and we are getting stakeholders together to create more opportunity and equitable admission standards.
How many times have you been to Neshoba Valley
Zero.
Tech?
And I've been to Monty Tech 10 times, and I've been to,
Yeah, he got very irritated by that question because he kept hanging on to that question. It's like, how many times have you been there? How many times have you been there? It's like, it doesn't really matter how many times you've been there. You could still be there as many times as you want, but you still would be, but you still would get your point known out there. It's like, they're not going to look at you any less if you say, oh, I've been there. And so I said, it doesn't matter how many times you've been to a certain place. That doesn't necessarily mean you know everything about it. You could say, oh, well, I've been to this Burger King so many times, but that doesn't necessarily mean you know everything about that. But I digress.
I go to schools all the time. And so what does that mean?
It means that if you're trying to work with the vocational schools to
I met with the
expand it-
superintendent last week.
Well, if you don't go there, you are out of touch with what they need.
No.
My God.
That's absolutely true because they've asked you to come there before, right? You've
Oh, am I seeing a glimpse of his eyeballs?
been invited. All you've been is very critical of them, and you're
Barely.
critical of the
I'm critical of everybody who doesn't comply with the civil rights standard. So let's talk
True.
about that. So vocational schools like our vocational school, Monty Tech,
Oh, now he takes a quick glimpse at the crowd. You can see that.
comply with the civil rights standard.
Watch
so
this.
let's talk about that. So vocational schools
Yeah, see, there's that glimpse. There's that one glimpse you see there. But dude, what is it with people like wearing thick black rimmed glasses like as though they're Buddy Holly or something? But I digress. You should probably listen to that song "Fuck You Hipsters," which is a pretty old song by this point on Break.com. Wow, am I that old?
like our vocational school, Monty Tech,
Oh, he does it again! He does it again! Oh boy. I'm just gonna cheer whenever he actually takes a glimpse at the crowd.
when kids who are growing up in poverty in north central Massachusetts apply to Monty Tech, they get in at half the rate as kids from more affluent backgrounds. That makes me upset, right? And the kids who are going into the workforce after they graduate from trade school, they don't get access to learn a trade. Why do kids from more affluent communities and more affluent backgrounds get more access to our public schools?
Because of money. It's always about the money. Because of how wealthy and how rich they could be. It's always about the money. And their kids could be as poor as bad with their grades they want, but they will always wave those green stuff around to get them to look the other way and such, which still, unfortunately, still happens to this day, even in the United States.
So I am absolutely going to continue to hold superintendents who are violating the civil rights standards feet to the fire, and I'm not going to go for coffee until we get them at the chain. I'm not going to go for coffee with them until they change their behavior.
You had an issue with the selective criteria that they were using for the kids getting admission there, right? So do you think lowering standards to get more kids in is the really way to do it?
I think it's inconsistent with the civil rights standard to rank order students based on grade. Look, there are a lot of kids in 7th, 8th grade who come from tough backgrounds, and they don't have as good of grades as kids who come from more affluent backgrounds. And, our public schools fundamentally are not private schools. They're public schools. And poor kids should have the same access in North Central Massachusetts to a vocational education as anybody else.
Senator Cronin,
so I don't understand what you're arguing.
They have the same access.
No, they do
not.
No,
they do not.
No,
they do not.
The rate.
What is the reason?
Because
is it
we
attendance?
rank order students based on grades, and we use a private school admissions regime at our public schools. Again, that hurts our workforce. It hurts our labor force. It's the reason why nobody can get a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician. It's the reason why the cost of construction is so high.
Our time is up
I'm still learning as a carpenter.
on this. Do you both want to continue?
I'd like to continue this because
okay,
I would like to know which one of the criteria is the most that you feel is
Grades
unfair.
are the most harmful. I'm glad. I'm glad you raised that.
So you don't think that
I'd like to
hard
answer your
work should be
question.
rewarded? So if somebody works harder to do
Wait, what'd you say?
harder to do. So you don't think that?
So that lady is actually criticizing Pirro for not letting Cronin respond to what he's trying to answer on that, and that is valid.
I'd like to
hard
answer your
work should be
question.
rewarded. So if somebody works
I'll see if I can edit that in post to see if you can hear that.
harder to do.
Continue, please.
What she's saying is that Pirro's being very disrespectful and not letting Cronin responding to those questions that he's saying by overlapping with another question, being passive aggressive on that. So that's what that lady was actually criticizing him for, and that's one of the few times you see Pirro actually looking at the crowd, specifically at that lady.
So I'm glad you asked that question. So I have filed legislation to implement what has been going on at charter schools for the last 30 years, and that is lottery admissions. So lottery admissions make sure that kids from every socioeconomic background get in at the same rate. And Assabet, where I've been, Assabet Valley Tech has instituted a lottery over the past 2 years, and it did exactly what I'm saying it is going to do. It's going to eliminate opportunity gaps between kids from disadvantaged backgrounds and kids from more affluent backgrounds. It means if you grow up in poverty, you're going to get in at the same rate as a kid whose parents are millionaires. That's the right standard for every public school in every corner of Massachusetts.
The right standard is the harder you work, the better you do. It's not equal outcome.
You can work as hard as you want, but there's always going to be someone that won't work as hard as you, but will still get that job regardless. Maybe because of favoritism or other factors. So it's kind of like a bullshit in what Pirro is trying to say.
For everybody. Equal opportunity is there. Equal effort is not. And that's why there's some differences there. So,
it's there. Well, sometimes it's there, sometimes it can be there. It's just there are some people that will turn the other cheek in those regards.
if you want to solve the differences there, then there needs to be other changes made, because lowering standards for people to get into tech schools and then to go into the workforce with the lower standards. Attendance was one of the things that you said was too restrictive, correct?
So they're not going into the workforce. They're going to four-year colleges.
No, so
yes, they
you're
are.
Comparing
yes, they are, for God's sakes.
apples to oranges here. The kids that are going to carpentry.
No, it's not. Not apples to oranges at all.
electrical, plumbing, and the trades that they can go right to work. 90% of those kids are going to work. You're mixing.
That's not true. That's not what
you're mixing the numbers
what the
together.
outcomes are at our trade schools.
The kids that are going
more
to
than 50%.
The kids that are going to 2- and 4-year colleges are the ones that are in the medical field, dental, the stuff that
That's not entirely true. That's not entirely true at all.
requires a higher education there. The people going into the trades are going into the trades, but you skew the numbers so the information does not come out. It comes out in your benefit.
What? His benefit? Are you fucking kidding me?
We did the extra 2 minutes on that. Moving on.
Thank you.
The legislature wrapped up its formal session with several issues unresolved, including expanding clean energy facilities, which will be taken up
Where
again
are we on this? Okay.
in the next session. Please elaborate on your position when it comes to clean energy and climate change policy versus energy costs and balancing it with energy costs. Mr. Pirro.
Oh, don't start with him on this.
So when it comes to balancing the environment as well as the energy, I believe that we shouldn't have as many restrictions on letting people into the market to sell power. We're also over-regulating. Massachusetts has become a CARB-compliant state as of January 1st, 2025, which is essentially making it near impossible for anybody to purchase a diesel truck.
That's not true.
Delivers all of our stuff. We can't prioritize the environment over the public safety of everybody else. We're not going to have a place to live if no one can afford to be here. We're over-regulating everything when it comes to this stuff, which drives up the costs of everything. They don't realize a lot of the unforeseen consequences of the mandates that are pressed from the state level down, and that's the experience that you get from working in the private sector and dealing with these mandates and regulations that are imposed.
My opponent, his primary concern is diesel trucks. It's almost like he owns a fleet of diesel trucks. There's a contrast here. My priority is ratepayers. We need to bring down the cost of energy in north central Massachusetts. And I have been fighting teeth and nail and working with members of our delegation to do that. It has been a top priority for us because ratepayers are my top priority. We brought Attorney General Andrea Campbell out to Lunenburg, and we had a listening session.
Out to Lunenburg, the very town that Pirro is from. So...
And she brought with her everybody on her regulatory team. And so when Unitil filed for their rate increase, DPU and the Attorney General, we were all over them, and they rejected it. We need to get more supply into the grid to get our rates down, right? And we need supply from everywhere. We shouldn't be dependent on natural gas from Russia. We need energy independence in this country and in this Commonwealth. I've voted for historic investments in clean energy, in offshore wind. That's going to power hundreds of thousands of homes. We need to site and permit the transmission capability and systems to get more clean energy onto the grid. So we need to increase the supply. We need to continue to stay on the utility providers. And I want to say one more innovative thing that my office has done. You know, we have brought together Unitil, Eversource, and National Grid, and we are proposing that they go out and they procure supply together. So they will have more bargaining power if they go to market together to purchase supply, and that's one of the innovative ways that we are working to bring down costs to the ratepayer. That is legislation that I plan to file next session, and again, it's going to continue to be a top priority for me to work for ratepayers and on behalf of them.
5 minutes open discussion.
It seemed as though you thought me owning diesel trucks was a detriment or it was something bad. What that goes to show is that...
It's here we go. How much you want to bet he's going to say that Cronin is out of touch with them because he's going for a bust and such? How much you want to bet?
I understand what the transportation needs. What the legislature doesn't understand is that every single mandate that you impose upon the transportation system increases every cost from that bottle of water you're drinking to the jacket you're wearing.
What about the jacket you're wearing, you hypocrite? Holy shit. And you have a bottle of water as well you're drinking from, so...
Everything increases, from toothpaste to shampoo, all the food you eat, every single product you consume is going to go up with additional mandates. We're already losing people moving out of this state to other states, and we're losing their tax revenue because of the tax and spend policies here. Forcing people to pick what you want them to pick is not the right thing to do, especially when you don't know the unforeseen consequences that you guys are.
Well, he's not wrong about that, but there's also like an unforeseen consequence in that as well. So you absolutely do need to research in what consequences will come from like mandates and such, because if you don't, then it's not really going to reflect well. So I can't agree with him on that. Everything else about it is just, yeah.
Imposing. It's irresponsible.
So I think this, this is another area where I actually do agree with my opponent. And I have sent a letter, and I've worked with State Representative Meg Kilcoyne to ask the governor to push back those mandates specifically on diesel trucks. I don't think the standards that are being imposed are realistic, and that's the approach I take to everything, right? I understand that there are regulatory burdens that the state imposes, and when they're unrealistic, I will fight against them. So this is actually an area of agreement that I have with my opponent, that the state needs to realistically assess what is possible, what is not possible, and where the market is, right? And we have these clean energy standards for these heavy-duty trucks, and they're not available to be purchased on the market right now. So on things that, in places that we impose mandates that are not realistic, I think I address those issues with pragmatism, and I agree with my opponent, we need to relook them.
When did you, I saw the letter that went to the governor asking to push back those things, and I did not see your name on there.
I'll send you a copy of it.
So I don't know if there was a second letter that went, but the one that I saw with approximately 25 senators and
I
representatives.
haven't been CCing you on most of my correspondence,
no
but I'll
problem.
be happy to share it with you.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yep. Nothing else?
Anything else on this?
Yeah.
Nope.
All right, we don't have time for another full round, but let's, question 5 has been getting a lot of play. It seems to be the most prolific in terms of discussion, so could you tell us your positions
I can't remember.
on,
What was it again?
Your question 5, Senator Cronin, 2 minutes.
So I'm a no on 5. I met with Bill Brady and a number of servers, wait staff, and restaurant owners.
Oh yeah, that's like to increase the wages on like waiters and staff, like as opposed to just relying solely on the tips. So I think he gets at a pretty good argument why he voted no.
Earlier this week with Representative Margaret Scarsdale. It's going to lead to higher prices in restaurants. And question 5 is tip pooling in our restaurants. It's going to lead to higher prices. Wait staff, bartenders, back of the restaurant servers, they don't want it. So we need to listen to our small business owners.
That's like the downside when you get like those like ballots every 2 to 4 years. You have these questions. They never really. They explain what will happen, but they never really explain what will happen, like in the other side expenditure, if there's going to be any negative effects to it. And that's because they don't want to put it in there. Otherwise, they would just be an outright no altogether. So when you're looking at your ballot questions, not just in Massachusetts, but for any state, I recommend you do your full credible research on that. Look at every reliable source relating to that question before you make a intelligent decision on that, like an intelligent decision on that.
Who say that this is going to create a death spiral in the restaurant industry, and our restaurants like Brady's are absolutely the beating heart of.
I'll probably have to look into that restaurant of Brady's that he's talking about. If you're any from North Central Massachusetts, feel free to comment what restaurant he is referring to, because I don't know if I've ever been to that.
Creating downtowns that are a destination. So I am a no on 5, and I hope everybody will join me in protecting people like Bill Brady, who are great members of the Leominster community, and voting no.
Mr. Pirro.
Well, Senator Cronin knows my stance on this one, as I had an event for a no on 5 event 2 weeks ago. So I am in 100% agreement with him on that one. That is being imposed on us and from a out-of-state organization that's trying to impose their beliefs and standards on us here in Massachusetts.
It's not really like more of beliefs and such. It's more of like their like system that they want to implement that derives from like some sort of inspiration for belief. But that's daisy chaining. That's a whole other thing.
Okay, question 3, allowing rideshare drivers to unionize. Mr. Pirro.
That's a no for me. Rideshare drivers is not meant to be a career. They are employees that are, or not employees, they are independent contractors that are determining when they're going to work and how long they're going to work. An employee is someone who has to show up at a certain time, stay a certain amount, and then they're relieved of when they're able to go. That is not the case with the rideshare drivers. So my no on question 3.
Senator Cronin.
Yeah, I'm for question 3, and this isn't on my LinkedIn profile, but when I was in law school, I worked as an Uber driver. I think we have a lot of work to do to make sure that independent contractors have good benefits, and they are paid by these multi-billion-dollar corporations. I think every job is one app on the phone away from not being a career and that profession being just independent contractors. So I think it has implications beyond just Uber and Lyft. I think it has implications for every profession and all of us, and I'm stand with our unions on that.
And question 4.
Yeah, and plus, of course, he voted no because he did have that lawsuit with Pirro. I'm just saying.
Psychedelic drugs, Mr. Pirro.
I'm a no on that until there'd be more research.
I would have to agree on that as well. Because, there needs to be more research on that.
I agree with my opponent on that. I think it's a complex issue. I'm really troubled by the idea that people can cultivate it and grow it in their homes. I think
Well, I've known people that grew in their homes for like years and such, especially back in the 80s, but I'm not going to mention those people right now. But those people I know that grew them, they don't do that anymore.
need more regulation for that, and I think that's something that needs to go through a deliberate legislative process. We need to receive testimony before that goes forward, so I'm a no.
Exactly.
Question 1, auditing the legislature.
I would say no on that.
Allowed to audit the legislature, Mr. Cronin?
So I believe it's unconstitutional, right? I swore
unconstitutional. He doesn't use that word like loosely.
an oath when I was 19 to the Army. I swore another oath to the Massachusetts Constitution when I took this job. I will not endorse a policy I know and I believe is unconstitutional. I think it's going to be struck down by the Supreme Judicial Court. I embrace the values of transparency, but not at the price of violating my oath to the Constitution.
Mr. Pirro.
How do you pick and choose which parts of the Constitution you're going to
Oh, here we go. Here we go. You're picking and choosing right now, especially what you're going to bring up. Watch him bring up Second Amendment. Just watch.
uphold? Like with the 4885?
Yep.
Voting to take away people's Second Amendment rights.
Here we go. Here we
You
go.
don't think that that's going to be voted down
So
by
I'm
the
happy
courts?
to talk about the gun control bill. I want to talk about three things very quickly that
That
we
wasn't the
voted
question.
for.
Was
Well,
how
you're
do you
asking
pick
the
I'm
questions
asking how
and
you
I-
pick.
Pirro brought up the freaking Second Amendment as well. So if you're going to bring that up with that question, I feel like he should acknowledge and answer that as opposed to you just saying, no, just answer my question. It's like, you brought up Second Amendment in the discussion, so you can't say just answer the question I originally asked. It's like, you can't. Now that you bring the Second Amendment up, of course that's going to be a big discussion, for God's sakes. If you wanted him to answer the question, then don't bring in the freaking Second Amendment thing specifically. For God's sakes.
Can choose.
Kevin, may I respond to his question?
Quickly, we need to get to closing statements.
Police came to me and they said Glock switches are being used for gangland violence and they're not banned. We banned them. Police came to me and said that we are printing 3D guns that are unregistered. We registered them. That's a common sense gun control reform that law enforcement asked for. Law enforcement came to us and said extreme risk protection orders that take away weapons from people who are mentally ill, from people who are violent.
Exactly.
Aren't expansive enough. So we're allowing social workers and other people to petition a judge to take away firearms from people who are violent, for people who are mentally ill, from people who are going to create and cause trauma and
Exactly.
violence in our community.
Thank you, Mr. Pirro. 30.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with Second Amendment rights. If your sole intent is to cause like violence and harm and threaten and shoot up people with your guns, then you damn sure as well do not deserve to own a firearm, especially if you're a convicted felon, which should go without saying in any state, unless you live in Florida, that you're not allowed to possess a firearm if you're a convicted felon. It's just, that's how it is.
30 seconds.
You don't feel that that infringes upon people's constitutional rights whatsoever? I mean,
Absolutely not. Well, if you're, like I said, if you're a convicted felon, you are not allowed to possess a firearm. That's just how it is. And for God's sakes, next time you make a badge like that, Pirro, include the Nantucket tail for fuck's sakes. Because I feel like, he's like, it just got accidentally like clipped off and such. But come on, I can notice it clear as day.
what's next? Freedom of speech?
Here we go with the freedom of speech. Here we go.
I mean, you are stepping.
This is where I said he's getting desperate at this point to win support. Because he's not really talking logically at this point. He's just like, he's repeating the same thing that every other Republican under Trump have been saying and will be saying. So it's just unfortunate that he's another one of those kind of Republicans that is just stooping to that kind of level, as opposed to looking into what made Republicans like Charlie Baker really great at their job. But I digress.
All over people's.
By the way, Mr. Baker, if you ever watch this video, which I very much doubt you ever will, please consider running for governor again, or at least try to become a candidate for president of the United States. Maybe then I'll vote for a Republican the first time in my life. But I digress.
Constitutional rights there.
No. When the police come to me and law enforcement says, we need new tools to keep our community safe, I take that responsibility seriously, and I support the Second Amendment. I support our sportsmen. I support our hunters. I've used a lot of weapons in my life,
Cronin,
but we balance things because things are complicated.
You don't support the Second Amendment or the hunters. You know it, I know it, and they know it.
What are you talking about? That's completely irrelevant. What he just said. It's like taking away guns from people that cause violence and such to our communities. That makes sense, because those people's whole intent is to cause violence to those communities and shoot up and kill people, innocent people, then they damn well as well do not deserve to own a firearm. That's what he's saying. What part of that do you not understand, Pirro?
Okay, we need to get to closing statements by virtue of a coin toss. Senator Cronin, you go first. 3 minutes.
Oh, thank God he won the coin toss.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. And it's great to see a crowd. I guess the word didn't get out that the Bruins were playing tonight. But I also just want to give a special thank you to my grandfather, who's going to be 92 in 10 days.
Wow.
And has been my hero my whole life. So, Papa, it's good to see you.
I had a grandmother, my late grandmother, that died, passed away recently about a couple weeks ago. She was 90 years old, so it's great to see him. He still has his grandfather. Because the last of my grandparents are gone.
I did, and Kevin and the crew at FATV, can we give him a hand? I mean, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, I give credit for Kevin as well. He was very assertive and very polite to both of the candidates. Such he did his job exactly right, and I would love for him to moderate a presidential debate in the future in 2028, because I would love to see how he would perform in that regards. I mean, sure, for state senator, it's kind of small, but still, I feel like Kevin should be up to moderate a future presidential debate.
Thank you, but it's coming out of your 3 minutes.
That's okay. All right, to our community, it has been the honor of a lifetime to serve as your state senator these last 4 years. And in my heart, I truly believe that North Central Massachusetts is a region on the move and that our shared future is bright. When I first ran, I promised and I believed that my experiences as an Army officer and leading soldiers in combat could be leveraged as a senator to work across North Central Massachusetts with diverse stakeholders to drive progress and positive change. And in housing, transportation, education, we've truly made incredible gains. With my counterparts in the House, our delegation has delivered historic levels of state funding to our communities. In particular, I'm proud of the nearly $40 million in combined annual school funding increases to Fitchburg and Leominster, the more than 50% increase in state funding to our communities for roads, and the more than $10 million in disaster relief we delivered to the city of Leominster following the historic September floods. And last but certainly not least, reinforcing and supporting the renaissance underway in Fitchburg. I'm proud to have delivered $6 million in earmarks and grants to the city's downtown revitalization, working in concert with the city and the redevelopment authority. We need to keep all this great progress rolling. Significant challenges remain. We need state government to step up and deliver more local aid to communities. We need to reform our education funding formula to increase per pupil minimum aid to help communities like Groton, Ashby, Townsend, Lunenburg, Shirley, and Westford, who need greater increases in Chapter 70 funding from the state. We also need to mitigate the healthcare crisis in our region brought on by the closure of Neshoba Valley Medical Center and the corruption and greed of Steward Healthcare and Ralph Delator. I'm the right guy to take on these challenges. I have a record of delivering real results, and I've built the critical relationships across the state and within our community to lead this work. I'm proud to have the unanimous support of our legislative delegation and the endorsement, again, of more than 30 city councilors, select board members, school committee members who are Republicans, independents, and Democrats from the 10 communities I represent. The people I've worked closest with over the past 4 years believe I'm the right candidate to carry on this role and address the challenges that face our region. And I truly believe our team, this delegation, is just getting started in our work to move North Central forward. And I'd be honored to earn your vote on or before November 5th and continue to serve this community in our region. Thank you.
Mr. Pirro.
Okay, so that was like, I only watched half of like his closing argument. I didn't watch the other half, and yeah, I haven't watched Pirro's closing remarks, and this is like the only time you see John Cronin like look at the crowd while looking at us at the same time while he's speaking. That's how you actually should speak if you necessarily need your notes. Pirro doesn't do that at all. But will he look at the crowd while he's giving his closing remarks? Maybe you might be lucky to get a glimpse, but I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Thank you, Kevin.
Please hold the applause till the end, please.
Thank you, Kevin. FLAP-TV, FATV, LATV for hosting tonight's debate. The differences between my opponent and me are very clear. While the current administration continues to embrace a tax and spend policy that's going to drive up the cost of living, I bring 25 years of real-world experience making hard choices to keep a business running and a family thriving. I know firsthand what it's like to face the same struggles you do because I live them every day. Unlike what it's like to face the same struggles you do because I live them every day.
My God, he looks so creepy with that kind of stare. Even without the glasses, it's like, that's kind of concerning.
Every day. Unlike the governor, lieutenant governor, and current representatives, I've had the responsibility of making difficult decisions, not just relying on.
Does one of those include, like, the lawsuit that you faced a few years ago?
On taxpayer money to cover my mistakes. Over 55% of my campaign contributions have come from within the district, not including my own. Showing that I'm accountable to the people of the district, not to Boston elites or special interest groups.
Again with the freaking Boston excuse.
As your senator, I'll prioritize affordability, transparency, and meaningful reforms to improve our district. I've also pledged to open a nonprofit to support causes here, and any leadership stipend I receive will go directly to benefit our community. It's time for balanced, accountable governance that puts the needs of the people first, and I humbly ask you for your support and your vote. Thank you.
And
that's it.
And that concludes this debate. We want to thank all of the audience members, or most of the audience members, for respecting the rules as participants.
I love how Cronin just goes directly to Pirro, just shakes his hand, where...
For those of you watching on TV, please stay tuned. We have a roundtable discussion hosted and moderated by Glenn Fossa with 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans to talk about and analyze tonight's debates. So please go out and vote. Thank you to both of the candidates.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. My final results. I felt like John Cronin handled that debate extremely well in a very professional manner, and like I said, he was always like attentive, like looking at the crowd, because the crowd deserves to be part of that discussion as much as the people that are on the stage. But you don't really see that with Nicholas Pirro. I mean, the only times like he actually looks at the audience or glance at them is when that lady was calling him out on not letting Cronin answer that question, and during his closing statement. So he talks about so much. So Pirro talks so much about Cronin being out of touch and being in line with the elites in Boston and such, that you've seen how he brings it up again and again and again. He's just like kind of desperate to get those votes at this point. And the fact that people like my dad support Pirro is just ridiculous, because I know my dad is a much smarter person than I give him credit for. He is smart, but I think the only reason he chose Pirro is because he's just a Republican. It doesn't matter if the person he's voting for is smart or stupid, as long as the Republicans there nonetheless, which is kind of sad. So I definitely would support John Cronin and continuing the great work that he does. And I haven't seen like the debate like on the closing argument, so let me see if that's actually on their YouTube channel. So the video's right here. So let me see if there's like a like you think, oh, there's not like a lot of views on these videos. Well, that's because it's like that region of Massachusetts and such. What do you expect, Mr. Beast or PewDiePie levels? Then you wouldn't see videos like this at all. You wouldn't see like hours-long videos of like discussions and debates and such going on, because that's not what people like Logan Paul and Jimmy Donaldson are all about. But no, I don't see that like reaction from 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats about the debate. Oh, Storytime, books that we love, season 5, episode 3, nice. But yeah, overall, I at least like I have to give Pirro credit. He doesn't embrace the full personality of Donald Trump. He's not waving his hands like and talking all this garbage bullshit. Well, he does bring up some garbage bullshit, but not to the extent that Trump does on a daily basis. But still, like, he doesn't really Pirro, even if I'm like independent on this, Pirro doesn't really strike me as the type of person I would want to represent me. Because, like I said, one of the complaints I have about his performance in the debate was that he doesn't actively look at the crowd. Because I believe when you look at the crowd, when you glance at the crowd while you're giving like your discussion, debate, and such, you're bringing them into the discussion, because these are the people that vote and are going to vote for their state senator. So to not include them is a great disservice to them. Which I remember seeing an episode of Dick Cavett show where it's like Leslie Norman was criticizing when like a politician, that because he kept looking at the crowd. It's like, why don't you look at me, not them? And I think he remember saying, oh, what was that, like what was that called up? Gore Vidal. Yeah, Gore Vidal was the name. Because I remember, like, in that video, Lester Norman says, why don't you look at me while you're talking, not just them? And Gore Vidal said, well, Norman, these people voted for us, so I feel it would be a great disservice to them if I don't include them into this discussion. And he's absolutely right. But anyways, that's my reaction on this. It's longer than it showed up, but hey, this is an hour-long debate. So, yeah, thank you so much for watching if you're interested, and be sure to vote on or before Election Day. And I will catch you all later, so have a great day.